Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for another YouTube video discussion video. Now, this video is going to be a little different. It's an idea that's kind of been floating around in my head, and it seemed like it was something that's going to work out better when I first thought of it. And I forgot what that initial idea was, and I thought, oh yeah, that would be kind of cool to talk about. But it is still an idea that persists in my head. So I guess we'll go ahead with it. So for now, I'm gonna call this series Double-Edged Sword. It's basically a series, hopefully more than just one video, so an actual video series, where I talk about a grievance of mine, or just in gaming in general, or just in general, where it's kind of a two-edged sword. You know, it's kind of thing where it's like, it's good because of this, but it's also horrible. So, and you'll probably get the idea more as we talk about this, but I'd love to hear what you have to think about this particular one. And also throw out ideas out there for stuff that maybe you'd like to, I don't know, have us discuss down the road. But let's go ahead and get into this, because the first grievance that I want to talk about, the first double-edged sword, is collecting. Go ahead and get it out there, because I'm a collector. It's no secret. In my storage room, I probably have 30-something game consoles. I'd have to go back through and update the count, because I've since bought more since then. But last time I checked, I was right about at 28, and that was, I think, when the PS4 was out. So if you count the current gen consoles plus portables and stuff, it's probably at 30 or more. And there's probably hundreds of games in my library between digital and physical games. So my biggest grievance with collecting is storage space. You know, where do I put all this stuff? It's almost easier to just go full digital, right? And just be done with physical games altogether, because where are you going to put them? So it's enjoyable in some ways because I have a physical copy of a game. It's in my hands, I can physically see it, and it's mine forever. Especially when you have some games, like Nintendo Switch games, where really still the majority of the game is on the cartridge. They might have an update, they might have DLC or something, but still the majority of the game is basically on the cartridge. But then you have other games where it's not. Other games where you pop it in and it's really just a certified voucher to purchase the game. You know, pop in a disc, like I think God of War did this, God of War Ragnarok. I popped it in and basically just installed the whole game. Why do I have the disc? I buy these discs to own the game, not to just get a digital version. Now, I still need the disc to verify that I own the game, which is dumb, but you should just simply go off of it. But at the same time, on the opposite token of that, sometimes it's a blessing. I remember one time when PlayStation Now was around, before it went debunked, and became what it is now, with it basically being PlayStation Plus, where they had infamous Second Son. And they did this before of Hollow Knight also. I started playing infamous Second Son, I started playing Hollow Knight, and they took it from the service. They took it from the service. They're like, nope, it's not on there anymore. It's gone. Well, okay, well, GameStop has a copy of Second Son for $10. I'll just go pick it up. And I did, and I finished Second Son. And now I think it's on PlayStation Plus now, but I can't trust it anymore. I can't trust the fact that, you know, I might start playing a game and they're going to remove it. And if it was the kind of thing where I think even if you download it on Xbox Game Pass, you still have access to it, even if they remove it from there. I could be wrong, because that very rarely ever happens. I'm usually finished and done with a game by the time they remove it, but I don't know. So that's one grievance that I have, is it feels like digital is the way to go, but sometimes they remove games and you don't get access to them anymore, especially if the publisher doesn't let them renew the rights. Then you have a game no more. Whereas you have a physical copy of a game, even if it's a lesser known game that maybe has no reason to ever come to a service ever, you have a copy of that. As an example, Scourge Hive is a game that I own for Game Boy Advance. It's a Metroid-like game. It's a Metroidvania-like game. I enjoyed playing it. It's not on NSO. I haven't seen it show up anywhere. I never seen it show up on... I mean, granted, it only came out for the Game Boy Advance and the DS, but I never saw it come to Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Steam bundles, anything. So if it did, I'm not aware of it. But as far as the main three consoles, I only ever known it to come out for the Game Boy Advance and the DS. And I have it on the Game Boy Advance. So that game's mine. Also, the Altered Beast that came out for Game Boy Advance. Now, those games may end up coming down the road to the NSO. Who knows? Maybe they won't, because again, it's going to depend upon the publisher. Will they let them have the rights to that? Does anybody even have the rights to it anymore? Because maybe that studio's gone downhill and is no longer available. That game's gone. But if I have a physical copy of that game, it's mine. You know, I'll give you an example. When I tried to go back, because my son was very interested in Space Channel 5, and I wanted to have him play Space Channel 5 Part 2 on the Xbox 360. You could only play it on the Xbox 360. You can't re-download it for Xbox One. You can't re-download it for Xbox Series X, apparently. So now the only way that I have to have him play this game is to pull out my 360, which sometimes is finicky about working. I should probably get my hands on another one and just transfer the content over. But for now, the one that I have is finicky about working. And then the controllers are weird. They have to stay wired in all the time, etc., just to play one game. That is digital anyway, so I should just be able to just re-download it. Whereas if I physically owned it on the original system that came out for the Dreamcast, there you go. It's connected, disc, shut the lid, turn it on. Playing the game. So that's one grievance. And then the other grievance is just like I'm talking about, when you get these companies that they're just defunct, you know, and they're not around anymore. And so you really want to play a game that's not around anymore. Those games lose access. As an example, now with the Wii Shop and the Wii U Shop essentially being shut down, there are so many games that are lost that if you didn't get them then, you no longer have access to them anymore. Unless, of course, you already have them downloaded on your system. But if you didn't find out about it until, 5 minutes after they shut down the shop, well, you're just SOL, aren't you? And in some ways, I don't know. I feel like sometimes being a collector is like, what's the point? You know, you should just play one system and have everything just be backwards compatible and work on that. But I feel like in some ways, no. Because not every single game is going to come out. After all, let's look at Kinect games. How do we play Kinect games now? On Xbox One again? Oh, we have to have a Kinect. You can't use your 360 Kinect. You can't even play Xbox 360 Kinect games on Xbox One Kinect. And how do you play those games on Series X again? You don't. So if you have an accessory or something and they don't support it, you're just out of luck with that too. Kind of like We Speak. WeSpeak has become basically a dead accessory that can't be used for anything, even though it has a USB that you should just be able to just plug into the Switch and use it for voice. Seems kind of easy, right? It literally has a USB, which the Wii U had a USB, the Switch has a USB. Just plug it in, give us drivers for it, some kind of firmware, and let us use it for the Switch. Why not? You still continue to use that adapter for GameCube controllers, right? Still can use that, but you can't use WeSpeak. So it feels like collecting in some ways is a double-edged sword, in which sometimes it works out great because you get these great accessories and these great options, but then sometimes they just decide, we're not going to support it anymore. That Connect that you bought, it's useless. That WeSpeak you bought, it's pointless. That accessory that you bought that was cool back in the day, it's not used for anything anymore. And no one wants it. Why would they want it? They can't play anything with it. You're stuck with it. And while in some ways that's cool because, hey, I got a piece of history with me, right? I've got something that probably nobody else has. And I have a story with it, But at the same time, there should always be some kind of feature with it. There should always be something that just has continued use. At least that's how I feel. And I guess I'll just end this video with my final grievance, and that's price. Sometimes this is really a scale that changes. Sometimes digital is better. And I'll give you a story for that. But sometimes physical is better. Most of the time you can walk into any place. I remember Walmart used to have like $5 DVDs, for an example. Movies that they just couldn't sell. They just put in a bargain bin. You see that from time to time. If you have a Second and Charles in your area, sometimes they put out a thing in front of the store that says free. I picked up an Xbox controller one time. A third party, really cool Xbox controller one time that was free because it was in that bin. So sometimes you just get bargain bin deals where they don't have a game that they're unable to sell for whatever reason, and you can just get it cheap. But then you have the opposite, where people go nuts in their head and they think that this game has some kind of a price because it's a gold cartridge version, which you already should know which game I'm talking about. It doesn't mean that it's higher in price. In fact, actually, the gray cartridge is actually worth more, if I remember correctly. Or like with Earthbound and stuff like that, where they charge basically an arm and a leg for a physical version of that game. And it frustrates me because as a gamer, when I really want to play No More Heroes, and you're charging almost $100 for No More Heroes, when it's $10 on the eShop, you really, or $15, $20, whatever it is, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than the physical version. You make me not want to go physical anymore and to physically play this game on the Wii. Why? When I can just go ahead, download it on my Switch, and play it with updated controls. You're really not helping the industry at all. And the example that I was going to give was with Shantae. Shantae is a series that I love to play. It's a Metroidvania-like game. It's a platformer. It's a really fun series. Love playing it. Love playing it. I started playing it with Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. I've gone back and I've done Risky's Revenge. I've played them all. Played them all. All the Shantae games. Love them. But I never owned the original Shantae game that was on the Game Boy. The Game Boy Color, to be specific. Even though it's still Game Boy. I don't see the difference in it. But the Game Boy Color version of Shantae was like $100, $150. Nah, dude, it's okay. I already own all the Shantae games digitally anyway. I'm just going to go ahead and buy the digital version for $5. I got the benefit of playing a Shantae game for less. Now, it doesn't feel authentic because, again, the game is trying to have me play with A and B, and I think select and a start button is what the Game Boy had, or maybe it just had a start button. So I'm all the time being like trying to press a button and it's not doing anything because, oh, right, I gotta actually press the physical start button. I gotta reach down here on my 3DS to do that, and it gets annoying when really the button should be up here. So you don't get the authentic experience of how it's meant to be played on a Game Boy because the Game Boy version is just too expensive. But I feel like I got a lot off my chest, and I'm sorry I took so much time. I just wanted to go ahead and talk about those grievances. Share any of your grievances if you're a collector like me, own physical stuff, have dealt with anything similar to this. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Let's get a conversation going about this and just share our grievances together. And also, what do you think about this series? Which so far is just being called Double-Edged Sword. I don't know if there's a different name I can call it. I'm open to suggestions if you want to throw something out there. Maybe I'll just call it My Gaming Grievances. That sounds much better. Welcome to My Gaming Grievances, everyone. um, but that's all the time that I have for you today. Again, thank you for watching. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and hopefully this will carry off into other ideas that pop into my head, and so we'll have a part 2, a part 3, a part 4, and other videos in the future. But for now, have a good one, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.